Continue with the Rush Hour Roundtable. A new topic now. Police departments across the nation are struggling with staffing shortages. 65% of law enforcement agencies say there's just not enough people applying to wear the badge and walk the blue line. 78% of agencies saying they cannot find qualified candidates. And these numbers have devastating impacts on the communities they serve. 25% of all agencies say the shortages are so bad they've had to reduce or even eliminate services, positions, and police units. And this comes as a memo was leaked last week from New York City's law department telling its police department to end marijuana drug testing for officers due to a new state law. Now, the only exception would be if there's reasonable suspicion that an officer is impaired on the job. But just 4 hours after that memo, the department quickly backpedaled. It's currently reviewing conflicts with the new state law. Now, some officers are welcoming the possible change to drug testing to conform with the times. Others say this sets a bad example. So we want to ask our panel, should police departments change their standards to allow more people to be officers? Let's start with you, Michael.
Well, I think if police departments allow alcohol, right, and you live in a state where marijuana is legal, I don't see how they can stop people who's, the only thing that keeps them from being a police officer is, testing positive for marijuana. So I don't think that it's a problem. I think there'd be a problem if they were impaired. But, we allow police officers to drink, which is an addictive drug. And so I don't see the problem with that, again, unless it is on the job.
Michael, I hear you. Brad, I see you nodding. Do you agree?
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I think the NYPD and honestly police departments in any state where marijuana is legalized recreationally should stop drug testing officers for it. Why shouldn't they be free to use it in their personal time like anybody else? I mean, we would let them drink. We would let them smoke cigarettes. I know I personally have a pretty intense coffee addiction. So marijuana ultimately is relatively much less bad for you than something like alcohol in many ways. So I don't see why. I will say this, in states where it's currently, illegal, they should definitely still enforce that standard for the police that they're enforcing on other people. But hey, of all the reasons to disqualify people from serving, I don't see why this should be one of them in New York or anywhere else.
Yeah, Angela, as a legal analyst, what do you have to say about that?
Well, first, I want to clarify what the NYC did, because they did then walk back on this policy. But actually, their technical policy has not changed, which is that cannabis use is not allowed on or off duty. The only difference was in whether or not they did testing for it. So that is a discrepancy, and I don't think that they are allowed right now to use it, and they won't be allowed in the future because it supposedly does impair their judgment.
Well, and I do want to say, according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, half of departments have loosened their policies to increase the chances of getting qualified candidates. And so we're not just talking about this, but there have been reported cases of lowering educational requirements or perhaps forgiving prior drug use. So, Megan, I do want to turn it over to you. Would you still feel safe in these neighborhoods?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't love this idea. And part of the reason is that, we have different standards for safety professions. We have different standards for pilots, for air traffic control, for train control. So this to me these are people who carry firearms. They have, we invest them with a lot of authority. And so I do feel like they should have different standards than the rest of the public. And that may be one of those different standards, because one of the things we know is that marijuana does metabolize differently than alcohol. And if an officer is smoking marijuana the day before he has some sort of shooting incident, I would imagine that's going to open up a city or a department to huge liability issues. I'd let Angela speak to that, who I'm sure is more knowledgeable, but I would think you would have some legal issues there. And beyond that, I don't think that the reason we're seeing a mass exodus from police forces is because they're just upset that they can't smoke weed. I just can't imagine that that is a major factor here. And so this feels a little bit like the previous segment where we're not really addressing what the problem is, and that we have a serious morale issue. Just as we have in the armed forces, you have people who don't feel appreciated. You have people who feel that they have targets on their backs, that they feel that it's untenable to try to do their jobs with the public criticism they're receiving. And so it's really a morale issue more than a lowering standards issue. So it feels to me like while we are addressing the responsibility of police within their communities, at the same time, we have to talk about where is this low morale coming from and how do we serve both of those needs.
Well, and that's really interesting that you bring that up. You know, we did speak with law enforcement analyst Mark Powell earlier this week. He said exactly that. There is this changing public perception when it comes to police, and it is impacting whether people want to go into this profession. Michael, I actually want to get your take on this. Do you think that Americans have to do some work when it comes to respecting this profession, respecting our police officers? Or do our police officers actually need to earn back that respect?
Well, what other jobs is contingent on people respecting it, right? Like, there are people who don't like what I write, and it doesn't affect what I write or make me not want to write. And, we're talking about professionals who are paid to do what they do. And, as far as that, sometimes we say stuff that isn't true because the vast majority of Americans' public opinion of police officers have been affected by things that they see, right? So if you look at Black Americans' opinion of police officers, it really hasn't changed in the last 20 years, right? It's around 75% negative, and it's been since the 80s. And what we're seeing is that the people who have traditionally ignored police brutality, police abuse, their opinions have been changed by seeing police brutality and police abuse. So it's not like people are making stuff up about police officers and then their perceptions are changing. People's perceptions are changing because there's, again, back to the last segment, cameras on every corner and we can see what they do.
Well, and regardless please go ahead.
Yeah, look, I can speak to that because I'm one of those people. 5 years ago, I'm 19 years old. I'd never had any negative experiences with the police. That might have been different if my skin was a different color. We'll never know. But I saw so many viral videos. I read so many horrible stories, and the social media age has shed light on lots of abuse that was going on without any sunlight in the past. I read about qualified immunity and the way that there's not civil accountability for police and police departments in so many horrible cases because of this outdated Supreme Court precedent and legal rule. And so I'm one of those people. I think we have seen a shift, and I think it's largely a good thing. I think we need people to be police officers, but we also need police officers to stand up and actually respect the rights of the communities they're policing, and they've failed to do that in many ways. So we also need to partially stop asking them to do so much. We ask too much of them to police too many things. Let's hone in their mission and actually focus on what matters.
Brad, I appreciate that perspective. And of course, the end result of this, a police union in San Diego told us, I believe it was last week or the week before, that a priority 1 call in San Diego, which does mean an immediate threat to human life, now takes 30 minutes to respond to. And that is the end result of this. And it is not good for these communities one way or another. I do appreciate all the perspectives on this. We do need to get to our last roundtable topic, though. A woman sending a letter to her neighbor asking her kids to be quieter when they're playing in their yard. When is it appropriate to tell other people's kids to be quiet, if at all? Our panel will be weighing in. Don't go anywhere.